My boyfriend said I was paranoid about his female friend. Then I saw his Instagram story. Birthday dinner. He canceled. With her. I confronted him. And that's when his mask finally slipped. I stared at my phone screen, watching Matthew's story for the third time. There he was at Meridian, the restaurant where he'd promised to take me for my birthday last week. The same birthday dinner he'd canceled because of a work emergency. But Matthew wasn't alone. Alicia sat across from him, laughing at something he'd said. Her hand rested on his arm in that casual way that suggested familiarity. Intimate familiarity. My stomach twisted. I'd seen this gesture before, at his friend's party 2 months ago, at the coffee shop where we'd accidentally run into her, at every gathering where she materialized like clockwork. "You're overthinking," Matthew always said when I brought up Alicia. "She's just a friend. You're being paranoid." The word paranoid had become his favorite weapon. Paranoid when I noticed how his eyes followed her across rooms. Paranoid when I questioned why she texted him at midnight. Paranoid when I pointed out how she touched him constantly, marking territory like a cat. I screenshotted the story before it disappeared. Evidence. Though evidence of what, exactly? Grace would tell me to trust my instincts. Russell, Matthew's own friend, had been dropping hints for weeks that something wasn't right. But Matthew's voice echoed in my head. "You're imagining things. You're being insecure." The apartment felt too small suddenly. I needed air, space to think clearly. But first, I needed to understand what I'd actually seen. Was this just dinner between friends, or confirmation of what I'd suspected for months? My hands shook as I set the phone down. 3 years with Matthew, and I'd learned to doubt myself so thoroughly that I questioned my own perceptions. Not anymore. Russell met me at the coffee shop on 5th Street, sliding into the booth across from me with concerned eyes. I'd texted him after seeing the Instagram story, asking if we could talk. "You look like hell," he said gently. I pushed the receipt across the table, the one I'd found in Matthew's jacket pocket. Meridian Restaurant, dated last Tuesday, the night he'd claimed to be working late at the office. "He's been lying to me." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "About Alicia, about where he goes, about everything." Russell studied the receipt, his jaw tightening. "There's something you need to know about Matthew, about his pattern." I leaned forward. "What pattern?" "He did this with Celia, his ex before you. Kept Alicia around as his backup plan while gaslighting Celia into thinking she was crazy for noticing. When Celia finally left, Matthew was with Alicia within a week." The words hit like ice water. "How long has this been going on?" "Years. Alicia enables it because she gets Matthew eventually, even if it's just temporarily. Then he finds someone new, and the cycle starts over." Russell reached across the table, covering my hand with his. "You're not paranoid. You're not imagining anything." I pulled my hand away, needing to process this alone. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Would you have believed me?" Matthew's good at making people doubt themselves. I've watched him do it to 3 different women now. 3 different women. I wasn't special. I wasn't the exception. I was just the latest in a line of women Matthew manipulated while keeping Alicia in the wings. "I need to confront him," I said. Russell's expression darkened. "Be careful. Matthew doesn't handle being exposed well. When Celia confronted him, he got violent." I waited until Matthew returned from his business trip. Another lie, I was certain now. He found me sitting at our kitchen table, the restaurant receipt placed precisely in the center. "We need to talk." Matthew glanced at the receipt, and I caught the micro-expression of panic before his face smoothed into practiced innocence. "Where did you get this?" "Your jacket pocket. The night you said you were working late." I kept my voice level. "Want to explain why you were at Meridian with Alicia instead?" "It wasn't what it looked like. We ran into each other, grabbed a quick bite. I didn't mention it because I knew you'd react like this." The gaslighting was so automatic, so rehearsed. How many times had he used these exact words with Celia, with the woman before her? I saw your Instagram story, Matthew. That wasn't a chance encounter. His keycard from the Meridian Hotel sat next to the receipt, another piece of evidence I'd found. Not just dinner, a room. Matthew's mask finally slipped. You went through my things? I went through my boyfriend's jacket for gum and found proof he's been lying to me for months. I stood up. Russell told me about your pattern, about Celia, about how you keep Elijah around as your safety net while making your girlfriends feel crazy. Russell's jealous. He's had a thing for you since... Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. No more lies. No more making me doubt myself. I know what you've been doing. Matthew's face transformed, the charming mask dissolving completely. What remained was cold, calculating anger. You want the truth? Fine. Elijah understands me in ways you never could. She doesn't question everything I do or make me feel guilty for having friends. The admission should have hurt more. Instead, I felt relief. Finally, honesty. Then be with her. We're done. You can't just... Watch me. I was already moving toward the bedroom to pack. I threw clothes into my suitcase while Matthew paced behind me, his voice rising with each desperate argument. You're overreacting. We can work through this. There's nothing to work through. You've been emotionally cheating for months while convincing me I was crazy for noticing. I grabbed my phone charger from the nightstand. I'm done being gaslit. Where are you going to go? Your lease here doesn't end until... Grace offered her spare room. I zipped the suitcase closed. I'll get the rest of my things this weekend when you're not here. Matthew blocked the bedroom doorway. You're making a mistake. No one's going to put up with your insecurity and jealousy like I have. The words were designed to wound, to make me second-guess myself one final time. 3 months ago, they might have worked. Tonight, they just sounded pathetic. Move. We've been together 3 years. That has to count for something. It counted for something until you decided Elijah counted for more. I stepped toward him. Move, Matthew. He didn't budge. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when you realize what you're giving up. My phone buzzed with a text from Russell. How did it go? I'm nearby if you need backup. The kindness in that simple message, the opposite of Matthew's threats, strengthened my resolve. The only thing I regret is wasting 3 years on someone who never respected me enough to be honest. I shouldered past him toward the door. Don't contact me. Don't show up at my work. We're finished. You can't just walk away from us. I turned back once from the hallway. Watch me. The elevator doors closed on his angry face, and I finally exhaled. Freedom felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Matthew appeared at Grace's apartment 2 days later, pounding on the door until the neighbors complained. Grace called the police while I hid in her bedroom, but he was gone by the time they arrived. The harassment escalated. Texts at all hours, calls from unknown numbers. He showed up at my work, causing a scene in the lobby until security escorted him out. He's unraveling, Russell said when we met for coffee. This is exactly what happened with Celia. I fingered the receipt I still carried, evidence of his lies, now evidence of his harassment. How did it end with her? Russell's expression darkened. Restraining order. He violated it twice before finally backing off. The next evening, Matthew cornered me in the parking garage beneath my office building. I'd stayed late to avoid him, but somehow he'd figured out my schedule. I have nothing to say to you. I kept walking toward my car, keys ready. He grabbed my arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You ruined everything. Elijah won't even see me now because of the drama you created. So he'd lost his backup plan too. Good. Let go of me. Not until you listen. His grip tightened. You owe me that much. I tried to pull away, but he was stronger. Panic flared as his other hand moved toward my throat. I said, let go. The security guard's shout echoed through the garage. Matthew released me so abruptly I stumbled backward into my car. "Sir, step away from the lady." Matthew fled toward the stairs while the guard helped steady me. My hands shook as I gave my statement to the police, showing them the bruises already forming on my arm. The assault charge would stick. Matthew's pattern of escalation was finally documented, recorded, undeniable. 3 months later, I sat in the courthouse watching Matthew accept a plea deal. Probation, anger management classes, and a restraining order that would keep him away from me for 2 years. Russell squeezed my hand as the judge read the terms. He'd been my anchor through everything: the police reports, the therapy sessions, the slow process of rebuilding my confidence. "How do you feel?" he asked as we walked out into the spring sunshine. "Free," I said, and meant it. Matthew had tried to contact me twice since the assault, both times through intermediaries. Both times, I'd referred them to my lawyer. The key card to my new apartment, the one Grace had helped me find, represented a fresh start he couldn't touch. "Dinner tonight?" Russell asked. "Somewhere that's not Meridian." I laughed, surprising myself. 6 months ago, I couldn't have imagined laughing about any of this. But healing had come in unexpected moments: Russell's steady presence, Grace's fierce loyalty, my therapist's patient guidance. "Actually, yes. But somewhere we can talk." Russell stopped walking. "About what?" "About us. About taking this slow and doing it right this time." I faced him fully. About building something based on honesty instead of manipulation. His smile was worth every difficult step that had brought me here. Matthew had taught me to doubt myself, to question my perceptions, to accept less than I deserved. Russell was teaching me the opposite: to trust my instincts, to value my worth, to expect respect as the baseline rather than the exception. We walked toward his car, my keycard catching the light as I tucked it away. Behind us, the courthouse stood as proof that actions have consequences, that patterns can be broken, that sometimes walking away is the bravest choice of all. The future felt uncertain, but genuinely mine for the first time in years. As Marcus opened the passenger door for me, I caught my reflection in the window, tired but resolute, worn but not broken. The woman looking back at me bore little resemblance to the one who had walked into that courthouse 6 months ago, clutching divorce papers with trembling hands and wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. "Coffee?" Marcus asked as we settled into the car. "Or something stronger?" I almost laughed. "It's barely noon." "Fair point, though I'd say you've earned whatever you want today." The engine hummed to life, and we pulled away from the courthouse parking lot. I watched the building shrink in the side mirror until it disappeared entirely, taking with it the last official tie to a chapter I was finally ready to close. "You know what I want?" I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "I want to go home, to my apartment, and sit on my couch with terrible takeout and terrible TV and not worry about whether someone's going to criticize my choices." Marcus glanced over, that familiar warmth in his eyes. "That sounds perfect." We drove in comfortable silence through the city streets, past the coffee shop where I'd spent countless hours over the past months, writing in the journal my therapist had suggested, slowly untangling years of self-doubt. Past the bookstore where I'd rediscovered my love of reading, no longer having to justify every purchase or defend my taste in novels. Past the small park where I'd learned to enjoy my own company again, feeding ducks and watching families without the ache of wondering why I wasn't enough. "Can I ask you something?" I said as we stopped at a red light. "Always." "When did you know? That I was going to be okay, I mean." Marcus considered this, drumming his fingers lightly on the steering wheel. "Remember that day about 3 months ago when you called me, furious because your landlord was trying to raise your rent illegally?" I nodded. I'd been livid, pacing my small living room and ranting about tenant rights. "You didn't ask what you should do. You didn't second-guess yourself or worry about causing trouble. You just said, 'I'm fighting this,' and then you did. You researched the laws, gathered your documentation, and stood your ground. The light turned green, and we moved forward. That's when I knew you'd found yourself again. The memory warmed me. He was right. I had fought that battle without seeking permission or validation from anyone. I'd simply known I was right and acted accordingly. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Drinks tonight to celebrate? No pressure, just wanted you to know I'm proud of you." I typed back quickly, "Yes, and thank you." As we turned onto my street, lined with old oak trees just beginning to show their autumn colors, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine excitement about tomorrow. Not because someone else had planned it or approved it, but because it was entirely, beautifully mine to shape.